We're here with Nick Curtis. He's the CEO and Executive Chairman for Lynas Corporation. Nick, how are you today?
Well, thanks, Tracy.
Well, as a leader in the rare earth industry, do you mind if I ask you some rare earth industry questions?
Delighted.
Okay. Right now, can you tell me about the overall demand for rare earths? Has it increased or decreased? We have a lot of conflicting feeds right now. Talk to me about the rare earth industry.
There's no doubt there is a period of confusion. What's the confusion about? It's a necessary restructuring of the industry after a crisis year last year. The volatility and price movements of rare earths last year, which are well recorded, were bad fundamentally for the industry. They caused a significant restructuring. I'd say they were almost necessary to get a reawakening of stabilising supply chains in the industry. The critical thing about rare earths is that it's, as we know, a very small dollar value and very small industry. But the applications that use rare earths are exponentially large relative to the size of the industry itself. And consequently, a disruption of that particular industry has led to major concern downstream in very big, the automotive industry, catalytic converters, the FCC industry, the electronics industry, in very, very big industries to ask themselves the question, how stable is this supply chain? And I think that's caused a significant restructuring of the industry, which we are in the middle of at the moment. I'd say that the downstream end of the industry, the ultimate end user, application user, they're all big OEMs, they're all big companies, they're pretty stable. The upstream end of the industry was unstable, where it was completely dominated by China, and is being restabilised by the emergence of companies like ourselves and Molycorp to be significant, stable, long-term producers. What I call the midstream of the industry, in between, the groups that actually use the material to transform it into something usable by the OEMs, that part of the industry seems to be in a state of flux as China becomes a destination for Japanese producers and as there's a restructuring of that part of the industry. I think that's where we are. We are in the middle of a significant restructuring there, and that's causing uncertainty about price, uncertainty about offtake, uncertainty about volumes, and potentially a lack of transparency. I think that's very short term. I think that'll be over very soon. I think the industry will stabilise, and with stability in the industry, without doubt, will come the re-emergence of a very strong growth in demand in the industry. Because at the end of the day, the best material for the technology applications that rare earths goes into are rare earths. Substitution is a substitution to an inferior application outcome, most often. And that is not an acceptable long-term solution.
The pricing of rare earths is a big issue in our industry, between the smuggling numbers, between the current supply and demand. It's very difficult to get accurate numbers out there. And of course, Baotao just announced a new trading platform.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about how you think this is going to resolve itself, or do you think that there are any existing viable solutions for pricing?
I think we have had a price discovery mechanism over the last 2 years. There was clearly an overshoot on the upside where demand destruction occurred as a consequence of an overshoot on the upside. And specifically, in cerium and lanthanum, that became very obvious. We've had a very significant retracement. I think we are back towards levels which are long-term, industrially sustainable levels. What's important is not the price, it's the stability of the price. So there's a long-term predictability about that so that end users can be safe in terms of using this material. They know they can get the volume, they know roughly where they're likely to have to price this, and then they can build around it. And I think volatility is against the industry, stability of price is actually for the industry.
We're following almost 400 publicly listed companies that claim to have rare earths, and they're utilizing these various pricing mechanisms to put a valuation on their company. Now, when you're looking at some of these companies, because undoubtedly you're looking at opportunities at all time, how do you place a valuation on them?
Well, the first thing we do is we don't use mean reversion as a price forecasting mechanism, which seems to be what a lot of analysts do. The past has nothing to do with the future in rare earths. There is a totally different set of industrial dynamics to the last 20 years in rare earths. So forget about mean reversion. Prices aren't going back to where they were. I think the question we ask ourselves is, what is the tolerance level of our clients in price terms, and where do we think that they either walk away from the specific best technology or substitute it, or they have pain that they can't support in terms of the application. Our job is to increase the volume of rare earths used in the world. And we're not going to do that by trying to squeeze maximum dollars out of every molecule of rare earths that comes out of the ground. We're going to do that by partnerships, by liaisons, and by understanding long-term relationships. We've done that with a big German industrial company, Siemens. We're working on publicly working on a joint venture with them for magnet production for their wind turbine application. And that's all about predictability, stability, transparency, and the ability to know that you can deploy this really exciting technology safely.
When I first got involved in rare earths, there were no analysts. Just in the last 3 years, we've gone from no analysts covering rare earths to approximately 60, 5 dozen. I'd love to hear what kind of advice you'd give these analysts on placing valuations on rare earth companies, because I see them having a wide disparity in buy recommendations and even sells on the same companies. What advice would you offer them?
This industry is a small industry, and competitive positioning in the industry is a function of client demand and client relationships. This is not the iron ore industry where push it out and people will come. This is actually a boutique industrial chemical industry. For us, mining is a very, very, I won't say it's insignificant, it's important, but low risk end and low cost part of our total activity. What's important is how we present the particular materials to the customers and the customer intimacy which we have. So I'd be thinking, if I was advising analysts, first of all, understand the dynamics of every individual rare earths, not just the aggregate rare earths basket. Take a view on the end application growth, and then find those companies that are best positioned to plug into that application growth through real customer relationships.
So Nick, can you talk to me about the restructuring, the overall restructuring of the rare earth industry? What's happening?
The imbalance in the industry that came from China being a dominant, poorly regulated producer of raw material that was for export has stopped. And that stopped with a shock, as we well know, last year. And that's led to a rethinking. It's actually interesting. It's led to an extraordinary awareness of rare earths at places where you would have never thought rare earths would ever be talked about. I'm always surprised that President Obama even knows that rare earths exist. So it's led to a great awareness of rare earths and a rethink about their criticality in industry and an awareness of their criticality in industry. But at the same time, it's led to a question mark about how do we build stable long-term supply chains that aren't as fractured as a supply chain. One thing that has always astonished me about the rare earths industry is the amount of rehandling of materials is extraordinary. It goes from one place in one form to another place in another form to another place in another form. There is a lack of integration. At Lynas, we've always set out to try and develop as integrated a flow as possible in the entire supply chain. And that's a relatively new model. I think China's now moving in that direction as well, where integration is being talked about by Balto and others as a critical issue. Molycorp, of course, talks about an integrated supply chain. I think that's actually the model for the future.
Well, we're hearing all kinds of rumors from insiders in China about aggressive conglomerations that are currently happening that are trying to achieve that. What are you hearing similar?
Rare earths is just going the same way as every other major resource industry in China has gone, where state-owned enterprises at very large scale have tended to be the dominant players. I think that is definitely the trend in China, that there will be a significant consolidation of the industry amongst a few larger state-sanctioned players, properly licensed. Illegal mining will go out. I think that's very good for the industry, because I think they'll then seek proper environmental practices, proper returns on capital, and proper pricing for the materials, rather than just cash-driven short-termism. But I think we'll see 3 or 4 major groups emerge in China over the next 5 years as the dominant players in the industry.
So Nick, I just want to thank you for joining me today.
My great pleasure.